Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to Hill and Ponton's live stream today. My name is Shelly Mark, and I'm here with Shannon Brewer, and we are here to answer your questions about VA benefits or VA in general. So let's get started.
Okay, our first question is from Christopher Goldsberry. The question is, how long after a VLJ grants an appeal is it finalized and compensation is given? Shelly, I'll let you take that first one.
Okay. So this really depends. So normally once there is a grant from a VLJ, this is going to be coming from the board. And let's say they're granting the service connection, and then that is going to be sent back down to the regional office for them to basically implement this into a rating decision award. And that's where the decision will be finalized and the veterans will be notified and they're retroactive released. It should be something that is, I don't want to use the word expedited at the regional office, but it should be done relatively efficiently. I would like to say within 6 months, but there is no guaranteed time frame. Sometimes it happens much more quickly than that, but I would say that that's a pretty good estimate.
I'm seeing with the remands, those are taking a long time, up to 6 months. But with the grants lately from coming back from the board, I've been seeing them happen within days sometimes, not always. Sometimes it's months. But with the ones that are just simply a grant, sometimes those are happening really quickly. So there's not really a timeline that we can hold VA to as long as it's not out of bounds. But sometimes they're really quick. Okay, this next question is from Angel Marrero, part 1 of 3. Greetings, can you please explain this denial? Your HLR request, and I'm going to try to this time go over what the acronyms mean, because I saw a comment last time that sometimes people don't know what they mean. So I'm going to try to read them out. Your higher level review request argued that an effective date of August 10th, 2022 should be assigned based on the PACT Act and participation in a TARA, that's toxic exposure. Service connection has not been established based on the PACT Act and TARA. Service connection for irritable bowel syndrome has been established based on presumption and your service in the Persian Gulf under 38 CFR 3.317. As such, the correct effective date is the date your ITF, intent to file a claim, was received on May 30th, 2023. Thanks. Is this, am I supposed to take this one first? I think you took the last
or I can give you a break and I can give a shot at it. Okay, so we're saying here that it was granted under the PACT Act and granted the August of 2022 date, and the intent to file was submitted on May 30th of 2023. So in essence, the PACT Act effective date is an earlier effective date than what would have been proper under the intent to file. It was submitted within 12 months of the PACT Act date. So I suppose that has attached to the PACT Act, and that would be the correct effective date. I don't know that I would argue it, considering that it's granting an earlier effective date than would have just been normally assigned based on the intent to file. Am I missing that, Shannon, or do you see something different?
Can you go back to part 1, please? Okay, so they were arguing for August 2022 based on the PACT Act, but they didn't get that. They got the date of the intent to file instead. When was the claim filed? It was after August 2023? Can you go back to part 3 again?
It said May.
May 20. So yeah, what they're trying to say here, it looks like, is they're saying it wasn't granted under the PACT Act. It was granted under the presumption, which could be correct. The PACT Act does expand some things for veterans, but if your claim wasn't affected by the PACT Act, if that law didn't change anything for you, I mean, IBS was already a presumptive condition before the PACT Act was filed. So that probably would not apply. And so you're just left with the presumption rather than going back under the PACT Act. The PACT Act only gives you the effective date if your case was changed by that law, implement of that law. Am I wrong about that, or that's...
No, you're right. I missed the part that this was the argument. I understand. Yeah. So they were arguing for the earlier effective date under the PACT Act, and it was denied. That makes sense because it's not based on any of, like you said, the changes that the PACT Act brought in.
Right. So if the PACT Act actually affected your case and you wouldn't have been granted without it, then you get that August 2022 date if you filed within a year. If the PACT Act does not affect your claim in any way, then you're not going to get the advantage of that date.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds right.
Okay. Our next question is from A. Lanier. Due to symptoms worsening, submitting a new claim to go from 70% to 100% due to PTSD. I have my psychiatrist DBQ, that's a disability benefits questionnaire, to submit as evidence showing it has worsened. I need help on how to submit the claim. Some say depending on how it is submitted, you may not be able to add new evidence if it is declined. So should I submit all evidence at once or hold some back? So should I submit for 100% and unemployability at the same time, or will that hurt my chances to get 100 and they just try and give me unemployability? I haven't worked for 2 years due to this. Is that it? Okay. So when you file a claim for increase, you're going to file it as a new claim, and you can submit anything you want to with that. It's not going to be an appeal. It's not going to be a supplemental claim or a higher level review appeal. Those do affect whether you can or cannot submit evidence. But when you're filing a new claim, you can file anything you want in support of that. So you file it on a 526EZ form for a new claim for increased rating, and you can submit any evidence you want. I recommend filing for unemployability at the same time, but any claim for increase is really a claim for unemployability. But I would go ahead and submit my VA Form 8940 with that appeal as well. They might grant you unemployability. I will be honest, right now under the current regulations, it's pretty hard to get to 100%. So I would hedge my bets and give myself the best chance by also asking for unemployability. And it's not going to hurt your chances for 100%. If you meet the criteria for 100%, they're going to give you 100%. If you don't, then they will also have to consider unemployability. Shelly, would you agree with that, or do you have a different opinion?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. There are a lot of times that we submit the increased rating and the 8940, and we come back and we get it. Not a lot of times, but there are times where they do grant the 100%, and the IU is then moot, and you just move on. But I agree that it's definitely best to do both at once.
Okay, this is another question from Angel Marrero. Is this denial correct? Your higher level review argued that service connection should be established from the date you were diagnosed and first treated, October 21st, 2022, for ED, erectile dysfunction. Service connection is warranted from the date your ITF, intent to file a claim for service connection, was received, May 30th, 2023. When a claim is received more than 1 year after the date of discharge from military service, the correct effective date for service connection is the date the claim was received. Entitlement to an effective date prior to this date is not warranted. Whatever happened to onset date?
Okay, can you flip back and show me those dates again? See, it was all right. So argued should be established. Okay. So we're arguing for an effective date of October 2022, which is based on diagnosis. Okay, the next slide, please. And then the intent to file was received May 30th of 2023. And then we have the claim was received more than 1 year. So I'm assuming the claim was received more than 1 year from discharge, which would mean that the effective date would not, or would be the date of the claim and when the claim is received, which would be the intent to file date as long as the claim, the actual form is submitted within 12 months of the intent to file. So unfortunately, unless there's something that I'm not seeing or there was something that was filed before that May of 2023 intent to file, I don't think you're going to be able to get back to the October of 2022, which is the date of the diagnosis. Shannon, did anything?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the regulation provides that you get the date of the claim or the date of onset, whichever is later. You don't get the earlier of those two dates. You get the later of those two dates. So if you can't go back before the claim was filed, basically, or the intent to file was filed. So, but if, for instance, you filed a claim and you weren't entitled to the benefit yet, the disability had not had its onset yet, you wouldn't get to go back all the way to the date of the claim. You'd only get the onset date. So you get the later of those two dates. Okay, this question is from Timothy. Part 1, plan on filing for VA aid and attendance for my migraines rated at 50%, overactive bladder rated at 40%, sleep apnea rated at 50%, and PTSD with insomnia rated at 100%, static over 5 years. Based on a previous podcast, Ms. Carroll mentioned it would be a good idea to get an independent IME done by a PsyD, which was just completed, and based on her conclusion, I need regular help with ADLs, that's activities of daily living, for significant memory impairment, personal hygiene, and leaving appliances on, which poses safety concerns and further increases reliance on external support, and his spouse for daily functioning. I also had VA Form 2680 completed by a doctor of osteopathic, which supports my need for regular assistance with my ADLs, as well included note from PCM, I guess that's primary care, stating the same. How do I word my supplemental claim for aid and attendance for my PTSD and other service-connected conditions? And based on all your expertise, what consists of an aid and attendance exam?
Oh, okay. So yeah, my understanding here is that we have not filed yet for aid and attendance. And so you don't necessarily have to file a supplemental claim. You can just submit that 2680 form for the aid and attendance, and definitely attach the evidence that you have developed in support of the claim to that. And then, of course, they're going to start development on their end. They will order an examination to determine if you're in regular need of aid and attendance. As with your activities of daily living, just like you just said, that's exactly what the exam should be. That's what they should be looking at, is if you need assistance with activities such as dressing, bathing, cooking, cleaning, medication management, transportation to and from your appointments, things like that would require someone be with you and kind of overseeing your day-to-day activities. I don't know that there's any special wording that you need to use in that. Shannon, I don't know if you guys do anything different other than just submitting the application.
Not unless, I mean, if there's something specific that you feel like you want to draw to their attention, absolutely. I'd put that in a cover letter with the 2680. But mainly you just need to make sure that your evidence shows and that you explain why you need help with your daily living, what kind of activities you need help with, who currently helps you with them. Those kind of things are, the more information you can give them, the better. The more details you can give them, the better. You can use, statement from the person who's helping you as well. But I don't think there's any specific wording that you need. And as far
I
as
agree with that.
yeah, as far as
Shannon,
the exam,
sorry.
no, it's like you said, as far as the exam, they want to know what kind of help you need and make sure that
Right.
it's due for the service connected conditions.
That's a really good point, Shannon. We have a lot of clients that have a number of different issues that impacts their ability to perform their activities of daily living. And sometimes, not really knowingly, they may include some of the conditions that they're not service connected for when they describe their needs. And that's something that the VA is going to look at and say, okay, you need assistance with this, but it's due to non-service connected conditions. So you want to be kind of careful in that and try to only address the issues that you're actually service connected for.
Okay, this question's from AC 2074. Hi, 2003 Iraq vet. Sleep apnea denied in 2023, obese 3 pounds. April 12th, 2025, filed supplemental claim, disability benefits questionnaire, lay statement, nexus, explaining service connection and middle step to obesity with cervical strain, PTSD, and asthma, causing weight gain and physical limitations, and medical references. Denied again, June 11th, 2025, saying obesity caused by calorie intake. I'm going to do a higher level review, and then if that doesn't work, direct review. If denied, is it a good idea to have a new sleep study with my lower weight? Thank you. Couldn't hurt. Now, just keep in mind, sleep apnea is it's hard. It's a hard claim. VA doesn't like it. They don't want to grant it. They fight it, and they're always going to say it's due to obesity. But if they have that in there and it's a possibility, they're going to say that. I think it would be a good idea to have a sleep study with your weight not being obese. 3 pounds is kind of ridiculous for them to hang their hat on, but weight gain is a major factor in sleep apnea. So I think that can only help you. If the doctor would be willing to say that he doesn't think your sleep apnea is due to your weight gain, or if he will connect it more, then yes, that could help you. Am I missing any part of the question, Shelly? I get kind of
I did will you go back to the first slide, please? I think that he said he had a DBQ or a nexus letter with obesity as an intermediary step there.
right.
I'm assuming that, I mean, that's a great argument too. I think the higher level review is definitely the way to go. At least give that avenue a good, evaluation, and make that argument that if you have had weight gain, that you have a nexus statement showing that it's related to your physical limitations that are stemming from your service connected orthopedic issues or whatever it is, then I think that's definitely worth arguing and trying to get them to address that. We do this a lot, and that, like, just like Shannon said, they just fight us on sleep apnea so much, and sometimes it doesn't seem like which way we present it matters as much as just them not wanting to grant it. But I agree with Shannon too. If you can establish it, not based on the obesity, then you definitely have a good argument there as well. And I would want to get the updated sleep study.
And PTSD is a known contributing cause to sleep apnea. So sometimes we can do that without the obesity there. I'd forgotten that when I got to the end of this question, I forgot that we started out with a not wanting it to be based, that I got to the end and thought we didn't want it based on obesity, but they do ignore that middle step. You may need your doctor to lay it out for them a little more clearly, or connect it to the PTSD directly. But again, no matter what you do, it is it's a very difficult condition for them to service connect for whatever reasons.
Then definitely look at the DBQ the DBQ that the examiner finished or completed for your exam and before your higher level review, and look at the medical opinion on there and see what they're saying. If they're saying that the sleep apnea is due to obesity, which is due to physical limitation or something of that nature, definitely point that out in your higher level review, because that's just helping your case, as far as it being based on the obesity. So you want to point that out to them. Sometimes you got to really point things out.
Okay, this question's from Tiny Tiny. Is sleep apnea compensated at the same rate if using an oral device versus the CPAP? Any kind of respiratory, I'm trying to remember what like a BiPAP, any kind of airway pressure. I don't really know what the oral device does. I'm not sure which device you're talking about. Like if you're talking about a mouth guard, probably not. If you're talking about a device that's an airway pressure, continuous positive airway pressure is what a CPAP is, but BiPAP is the same idea. It's air pressure. That's how they rate that. Now I know they're getting ready to change the rating on sleep apnea. They've proposed regulations to change that, and then it's going to be based on pulmonary function tests and things like that, and it's going to be really difficult to get any kind of rating. But it depends what that oral device does. Would you agree, Shelly, or am I?
No, I would agree with you. I know that the ones you mentioned are considered the continuous airway devices, but I don't know about the oral. I know that there are those mouthpieces now that you can use. I'm going to assume that that would not be,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think you would be compensated the same way for that.
Okay, this question is from JDH18702. Can I do anything about an improper TARA memorandum? That's toxic exposure. They got my MOS wrong. They had me as an electronics mechanic instead of an aviation electronics technician. Jet fuel fumes alone make a difference. Also, they never mentioned that the base NAS Poxtant River MD was a Superfund site and the dumping took place from 1960 to 1974 during the 3.5 years that I was stationed there, 70 to 73. And one of the dump sites was a quarter mile from the barracks. I am awaiting an HLR for tinnitus and hearing loss. I have other claims to file, anxiety and Meniere's disease and more. I did file an intent to file for the other claims. The Superfund site report lists carcinogens and neurotoxins.
Okay, I can try. So I think the initial question was the Terra memo and maybe trying to get that corrected. I would, I'm assuming that the higher level review for the hearing loss and the tinnitus is not related to the toxic exposure, but um, yeah, so I would definitely submit a letter to the VA, you know, clarifying your MOS, telling them that this is not correct. If you have an opportunity to have a higher level review conference with someone and it's related to toxic exposure, then you can definitely do it then, and ask them to look into that. If you have anybody that you served with that could do a buddy statement, that could talk about your what you were doing through your MOS, anything like that, you can submit to them and ask them to redo the development on the Terra. We have Terras that are completely negative, and then we submit evidence, and lo and behold, they list everything on there that's in the file. So yes, you can definitely work on having a Terra memo corrected, and that includes your bases as well. So you can submit evidence of where you were stationed, the information you have about the Superfund, and try to get them to concede exposure that way.
Yeah, I'll have a case, in a 5,000 page file, you can have 2 or 3 Terra memorandums that actually contradict each other. So they're not binding on the VA. They're evidence that they try to get and they see them. They're not going to be bound by what that Terra memorandum says. So like Shelly said, I would just make sure that they have all the correct evidence. If I'm wondering if they got your MOS wrong, is it wrong on your DD 214 or do they just have it wrong on the Terra memorandum or what's going on there? But, just make sure you can give them the correct information and have them look at it again. Okay, this question's from Ejo, 5 parts. Got some long questions today, guys. Exciting news to share. I had my first appointment with VA primary care. She's willing to do DBQs and nexus letters for me. VHA Directive 1134-2 lets VA doctors know they can assist veterans with filling out forms needed for claims. Intent to file done, gathering evidence, documenting now. When I submit fully developed claim, including DBQs and nexus letters, advice on the best way to submit all my evidence. I don't want to write on or highlight medical documents. Table of contents for each condition, cover sheet for each, visit with quick narrative and page numbers there. Should I list by first date treated or most recent first? What order? Trying to figure out the easiest way to make sure the rater doesn't miss anything and very organized. What do you all do? Thanks for the advice and the help. The VA claims process, especially after first claims, didn't go well 20 years ago. It can be daunting. Vets never stop fighting. That's good advice. This is my question or yours? I've lost track.
Well, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Well, it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job of gathering all of your evidence and getting everything organized. And I think that you can organize it in whatever way you find to be the most appropriate and the easiest way to digest everything. You'll be ahead of the game just by presenting all the evidence to them at first and submitting that. One thing I'll caution you on is just that sometimes they just don't look at it all. So even though you may present them with this very well established claim with all of the evidence and organized as well as it sounds like you're going to have it, if they come back with another denial, just try not to get frustrated and keep fighting, like you said. Um, and then maybe file a subsequent appeal and point everything out to them that you're including. One thing that we notice a lot is just sometimes that everything's just not reviewed properly when we submit it. But I don't think that's going to be on you. I think that what you've done, it sounds like a very thorough job of getting everything ready. So I would say whatever way you think is the best way to finish off organizing it will be fine.
I would agree. There's not a set way to do it. It depends on the case and the evidence, how we submit it. It's whatever makes sense for that case and that evidence and those claims. Just you want to make it, I would say you want to make it as easy as possible for them to grant this. So if you're giving them hundreds of pages of things, I'm going to be honest with you, they are not going to read all 100 pages because they are on a limited time as well. You want to give them the most important things. If you've got 2 pages that win your case for you, that might be all you need. You might not need 100 pages saying the same thing over and over. So just kind of keep that in mind, that if you give them very specific, if they're saying you're not diagnosed with something, then you only need 1 page that shows that diagnosis to make your point. So just kind of keep it in mind that you may not need thousands of pages organized in any certain way in order to prove something. I would keep it as to the point as I can, because that allows them to look at what you're actually asking them to look at.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Shannon. And we receive better results with a shortened, condensed version of the argument in a page or 2, rather than a really long argument letter, say, that we might submit to a judge at the board who's going to take the time to look at something like that. So sometimes less is more. If you're submitting a whole lot of information, maybe take a cover letter, first page, and just do some bullet points. And here's my diagnosis. Here's my in-service exposure, whatever it is. Here's what I have in the file to show you. That's a nexus opinion, just to kind of make it a little bit easier for them to process it.
I agree. Okay, this question is from Ryan Burns. On February 14th, 2025, I filed a claim for 3 new conditions and a supplemental claim for a denied condition through my VSO. On May 22nd, I had 1 C&P exam for 1 of my new conditions. I was scheduled on June 4th for the other 2 conditions as part of the new claim. On June 2nd, I logged onto the exam vendor website and saw that I did not have any C&P exams scheduled. I then logged on to the VA website and I no longer saw the new claim. I called the VA 1-800 number and the rep told me that it looks like they inadvertently closed my new claim when they were supposed to close the supplemental claim. He sent a message to the regional office, received confirmation of receipt of the message for them to reopen my closed new claim. As of today, this claim has not been reopened. Also, there is no record of the new claim showing. I'm sorry to laugh, but this is my life every day, all day. Also, there is no record of this new claim showing up on the VA website as either open or closed. What are the next steps I should take? This is, I mean, feel like I spend 90% of my time begging the VA to reopen something that they closed for no apparent reason. It happens all the time. It happens to us just like it happens to you. You're ahead of the game because you figured out that they closed it. We'll have people come to us and they think they have a pending claim and VA closed it a year ago. And, then you don't lose your effective date when that happens, but you have to beg them to reopen it. The next steps you should take, I would try. And again, this is the kind of thing where we have we try, some things work in one case, they don't work in another. I would email everybody that had their hands on that at the VA that I could get a name for and try to get them to reopen it on my end. I would also recommend on your end, you probably want to file, I would send a letter and I would entitle it something like request to adjudicate improperly closed claim, or request for adjudication, or something in big bold letters across the top, and then explain what happened. If you cannot get them to reopen it, if they just will not do it, my next piece of advice is to file a new claim for the same thing, attaching that old one on there with a cover letter that says, I'm only filing this because you wouldn't reopen my other one, but so I still want my effective date. I just, I try to make it as easy as possible for them to see what the mistake is. But if you file a new claim, sometimes that at least pings them to do something. It gets them started in the process again. There's a good chance they will get the effective date wrong, but you can always appeal that and continue to fight it. So there's no one tried and true answer to get them to do what they're supposed to do, because they made a mistake. So there's not a process for this because it's their error. It's not something that they were supposed to do. So there's no answer for how to get them to undo the thing they weren't supposed to do. I probably made that more confusing than it needs to be. But Shelly, what do you guys do on your team to reopen?
It is not confusing. It makes complete sense to me because I spend so much of my time dealing with this as well. And, we're not kidding when we say that we go through the same thing. We submit the claims, the appeals, everything. And, we have a little bit of information because we do have some access where we can get on and see, but we're seeing the same thing. They closed it. Why did they close it? We have no idea. And it's a battle of trying to get it reestablished, reopened, something done. We do the exact same thing Shannon just said. We send letters asking them to reopen the unadjudicated claim. And then if that doesn't work, we resubmit. And always attach the original that you submitted. That way, when you get your grant, you can argue your effective date back. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the only thing that you can do. But the good news is that you are aware, because Shannon is spot on that we have clients that have no idea when they come to us that the claim that they've been waiting on was closed a year prior.
It's maddening. Okay, this is another question from Tiny Tiny. Has Doug Collins, VA Secretary, helped the VA regarding claims, or has he hurt? I'm not seeing that much. Oh, I'm sorry. I think this was your question, but I'll just go. I wouldn't say either one right now. I mean, we get a new secretary every time we change administrations, and I'd like to say that there's a huge difference, but there's really not that much of a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Their job is not supposed to be partisan. It's supposed to be to run the VA and make it work. Obviously, there's a partisan element to it, but their job is to make the system better. Hopefully that's what they're doing. Hopefully that's what they're doing their job. I don't see any, I haven't seen anything speed up since this administration took over. I haven't seen anything slow down necessarily. I'm not really seeing any worse or better decisions. I wouldn't say it really has affected anything yet. That doesn't mean it won't. That doesn't mean things aren't going to change. They always do. But at this point, I couldn't really say helped or hurt. I haven't seen, my personal experience with cases I've seen, I haven't seen any difference. Have you, Shelly?
I haven't. I really haven't seen any differences. I agree with what you're saying, is that we just don't know yet. So from where we're at, we haven't seen any changes yet. And I think even with the changes that have been made or that will be made in the future, I think it's going to take a while for it to move through, for us to see any changes if that, ends up happening. Hopefully there'll be positive changes, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I haven't seen any change in timeframes. Same as you, Shannon, no changes in like favorable or not favorable decisions
It seems to be about the same as it always was. I've been doing this for 15 years. I mean, we've definitely seen improvements in the VA system over that time. When I started handling VA cases, they were sending us a bank box full of paperwork. That was a C file. So we've definitely seen improvements since then. The system's automated, things move faster. The AMA system has really sped things up in a lot of ways. So those are all good things, and that's been not necessarily per party or per secretary. I hadn't, I think I'm hopeful. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, this question's from Happiness. I have done a supplemental claim for helpless child 2 times with evidence from doctors that they have ignored twice now in evidence section. I played it out so clearly last time. Is there a trick when uploading to Quick Submit? I did a supplemental claim for helpless child in Quick Submit. They denied again, not looking at the updated medical records from doctors that they also ignored last time. It is uploaded on Quick Submit. Tips, advice,
But
tricks.
so it sounds like,
Oh, sorry, I didn't read that last part. I've been doing helpless child for 6 months now. They are driving me crazy.
okay. So it sounds like the question here, there's no question that the evidence was submitted. It's a question of whether, they're actually considering it properly. Will you go back to the first slide? And they're denying the helpless child claim. This is kind of a not the easiest question to answer without a lot of facts, because we would really have to look into the disabilities that the child has, when it was established, what evidence we're using to show that it was established, and to make sure that the child would be eligible as a helpless child. I'm assuming it says it's now in the evidence section, so you are receiving a rating decision, or you have received a rating decision for it. So if you have a question, you could file a higher level review, request a conference, point it out to them, and maybe you could get some clarification on what it is that they're saying. There's a reason that they're not establishing it as a helpless child. But I would really need to look at the facts of the case to say for sure whether the child would qualify, because it's not that easy with the VA to qualify a helpless child. They're pretty stringent with the requirements.
And the regulation reads kind of funny. So just to make sure that you're aware of what you're trying to prove, because that can make all the difference in the world. Your child has to be over 18 to be a helpless child, so they can be a dependent, obviously. But what you have to prove is that they were incapable of supporting themselves prior to the age of 18. So the medical records that you need to be submitting are the ones from before that child turned 18, showing that they were already incapable. They were never going to be capable of supporting themselves. So, I don't know if that's what you're submitting. It might be, but it can be difficult, so just make sure that you're submitting the right thing. The showing that the child is helpless now is not enough. You have to show that they were helpless prior to the age of 18. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and that's where we really run into a lot of questions with people and trying to establish that evidence before the age of 18. Yeah, a lot of people have the Social Security decisions from, when they've become adult, they're over 18, but the evidence has to establish it before the 18th birthday. So it can be a little tricky.
Okay. This next question is from Grace Smith. I already submitted a 4138. Can I submit the same form again for the same diagnosis claim to add more of my statements in support of my claim? Let's see. It's inadequate. Didn't list how it caused by service, effects, filing PTSD, and should I complete 210781? I think that's a different question, but same person. Mental health. Are there any other mental health forms to complete? I want all mental health forms submitted. Thanks. To start with, is this my question? This is my question. Okay. Yes, you can submit another 4138. You can submit 10 of them. You can, if you have more to say it. If you've got buddy statements that you want to submit on a 4138, submit them. Yes, you can submit as many as you want using the same form. As far as PTSD, yes, you should absolutely complete the 0781 form. That's the PTSD stressor form. Make sure you give them as much information as you can and narrow down your time frames as much as you can for your stressors. If you can narrow it down to a 3-month period when the stressor might have happened, that helps a lot when they're doing their research. Other mental health forms to complete, I'm not aware of anything else that you would need to complete. Just, make sure that you have your diagnosis in, that you have a nexus opinion if you have one, those kind of things. Shelly, am I missing anything?
I can't think of anything else. I think that covers it.
Okay, this question is from Mickadoodle, part 1 of 2. Good afternoon. I'm 100% permanent in total, 60% for rheumatoid arthritis of both hands, 40% TMV, 30% ankle, 20 for knees, and 10 for knees. I have been granted SMCM from the Board of Veterans Appeals. I did it. Same. Do you have to be 100% to get SMC?
We go back to part 2. Just make sure that I'm on the.
He's already at M, so I guess the question is, do you have to be 100% to get something further than that?
I don't think that. I believe the answer to the question is no. So you're 100% permanent in total. You've been granted the SMCM. I don't know if you're asking for a higher level of SMC, such as like R1 or something. But it is not a requirement that you have to be 100% for that, although you are 100%. I'm not sure if I'm answering that question properly. What was the second slide? 1 of 2.
I think it just said, do you have to be 100 to get SMC?
Maybe SMCS. SMCS, you have to have one condition at 100% and then one or more conditions at 60% separate from the condition at 100%. So that would be for the SMCS. And that
If
may
you're
be
already at M.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're looking to try to get a higher level, if you're trying to go O, you might be looking at, I'm not sure how you got to your M. So if it's through aid and attendance for your conditions, and then plus additional things, if it's loss of use of hands and feet, I don't know what the combination was that got you to M. In order to get SMC R1, I think you have to have O first. So you'd need something like, if you've got 2 different separate conditions that both cause you to need aid and attendance, you could possibly go that way to get O. And then if the aid and attendance that you require is a higher level, then you could go to R from there. But I'm not sure. That's the best I can do with the question as it is.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. BVA granted 60% back to 2009. Does the SMCM go back that far? Sorry for the typo. Oh, okay. So he's trying to get an earlier date for his M.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. So I feel like I would really have to look at the evidence to be able to say whether the SMCM should go back to the effective date that you're asking for the earlier effective date. It depends. It depends on if there's evidence showing the loss of use, showing what established your SMCM. If that is in the file back at the time of the earlier effective date from when your claim has been pursued, then I'd say that you have an argument to make there. But I'd have to look at the evidence in the file and make sure if it's something that they granted it as of the date that the evidence was clear that the SMCM was supported, then you may not be entitled to the earlier effective date.
And it depends procedurally how far your claim goes back. So if they granted it based on the date of your claim and your earlier ratings weren't appealed, you may not be able to go back. So it's not as easy of a question as it seems. It really depends on the facts and it depends on the procedural history of the case. Okay, Grace Smith, where can I find the Superfund site? If you do a look online, you should be able to find that.
Yeah, there are a lot of really good websites out there now. You can just Google it and you can find the sites. Lots of information out there.
Okay, this question's from Agent 2017. Hello, do you think the reports of VA providing selective healthcare will be allowed by law, especially if challenged to the Supreme Court? Shelly?
So we did hear about this. We can tell you that we don't have a lot of information. We did hear that this was not accurate, but we can't say that that's 100% true either. I would say that I would expect a lot of challenges if this does um, end up being something that goes into effect. But at this point, we really don't know because I don't even know if it's actually true or not, or if it's just a rumor. Yeah, at this point, there's so much information out there and so much misinformation that we have to kind of sit back and wait to see if we're actually getting accurate information or what. So as of right now, we do not know that this is true. And if it does end up being, then I would assume, yes, that it would definitely have a ton of challenges.
I can't I can't believe that's true. I certainly hope it isn't. And if it is, I cannot imagine that it would stand.
Yeah.
So that's, that does not seem like something that's going to be allowed. But you never know. So I would say it would be challenged and it would lose.
Yeah.
That would be if it's true. Again, we don't know that that's true, and I would find that hard to believe, but we have heard it as well. Okay, this question is from 50 Plus Life. What strategy would you recommend for Fort McClellan toxic exposure, Tara?
Well, so we work a lot on Fort McClellan cases. And as far as getting an accurate and favorable Tara on Fort McClellan exposure, it's possible. I would say that we do get some now that are pretty good. So you can definitely submit your claim with a statement when you were at Fort McClellan, what you were doing, all of the details surrounding your time there, potential exposure. Submit that to the RO and let them work up the Tara and see what it comes back with. There's a lot of evidence out there to support your claim for Fort McClellan. So if something happens and the Tara comes back and it's inaccurate, then you can obviously still pursue the claim. You're just going to need to submit some evidence showing the exposure and everything else. But absolutely try it. See what they come back with on the Tara.
And keep in mind that sometimes you have to go to the board to win those toxic exposure cases. They're very difficult. They're complicated, but they can be won. We are winning the Fort McClellan cases. A lot of them have to go to the board to win. So don't give up at the regional office level. Take it up.
And we've had a lot of success at the board with the cases. So definitely don't hesitate to file them.
Okay, this question is from Benny DeMarble. IU veteran, unemployability, I think 70% mental health for a year. Will the VA automatically make permanent and total after so many years, or is there a form to request if veteran has gotten worse? I don't think there's a form necessarily, but you can file a new claim and ask them to make it permanent and total. You can file a claim for anything, but if they don't necessarily go back and automatically do anything. But if you raise it with them and you have been at this condition, a year might not necessarily mean that it's stable. But if they granted it a year ago and you feel like it is more stable, you feel like you're entitled to the permanent and total, you can ask them. If they don't give it to you, you can ask again. It's if your condition's not getting better and it seems pretty static, just file it on a claim form. Just ask for permanent and total status.
Yeah, I agree, Shannon. I would just file a claim for it and maybe a statement explaining, this condition has been this way for this long and you're asking for permanent and total status. Just make sure you also include a form.
Yeah. Okay, this question is from Margie de Navarre. Is it better if vertigo, lightheadedness with tingling in hands and arms is presumed secondary to another problem or by itself? Are those using a service having better success with sleep apnea rating rather than going independent?
Okay. So can you go back to the first slide, please? Thank you. Vertigo, lightheadedness, tingling in the hands and the arms is presumed secondary. So if you're having the vertigo, lightheadedness, tingling in the hands and the arms, and feel that it's secondary to any service-connected conditions that you have, you can certainly file it as a secondary condition. Um, Filing it direct may be difficult, if it's going to be considered a symptom. So I guess I would need to look at your records and see what your diagnosis is, what you're being treated for, as to whether or not you want to pursue this as like a direct service connection. Were you treated for it in service, or is this secondary to something that maybe you've been diagnosed with and that you've been treated for since service? That's kind of what I would look at to decide whether to go direct or secondary. It sounds like it's a likely, probably something that would be secondary, depending on what your service connected conditions are.
Yeah, that really depends on, I mean, if your service medical records show that you were having vertigo and lightheadedness, go that way. But if they don't, then it's going to be real hard to prove. So that in that case, it would be better to go secondary to one of your service connected conditions. And the second part of the question, I think using a service, are they talking about using an attorney's office maybe, or
a like for an IME or something? Well, we talked about how difficult sleep apnea is to get service connected. So I would say that if you are looking to, unless you were treated for sleep apnea in service, if you're trying to connect it to something else, then you're probably going to need assistance, whether it's getting a favorable nexus opinion or working with an attorney that can kind of help you figure out the best strategy to argue it as service connected. I would say that that's probably one of those issues that you would do better if you do have some assistance on.
But I can just tell you, like, from my experience, I can have two different veterans. They have the exact same evidence, the same symptoms, the same story, the same doctor gave a medical opinion for both, and one will get granted and one won't. And it doesn't have, they can both be my clients, so it seems kind of, there's not a real good indicator of whether they're going to grant that or not, because you can give the same exact evidence and they grant one and they don't the other. So it's kind of based on who you get sometimes. Yeah. I don't know that you can improve your odds one way or another. That's just a hard claim. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, this question is from Bren. How will I know if the VA received my clothing allowance application?
I would assume that if you have a VA.gov account, then it should show. I would assume, unless it goes through VHA. I don't think so. I think it's still through Benefits Administration. So yeah, you should be able to log into your account and see that claim has been received. You can also call. You can call the 800 number and ask them to confirm, that it was received.
If you have a VSO, they can probably look for you too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this question is from Raphael Courtwright. I filed in 2016, denied 2018. I appealed the 2018 decision and I'm still waiting. I have gone from 10% to currently 50%. How many times can I appeal? My claim is ear and right knee. Combat job, but no combat. 1996 to 2000, U.S. Marine Corps. Okay. I have a better experience with California VSO. Arizona VSO is trash. I found out I have PTSD while getting medical help at local VA. I saved another Marine's life, but Sergeant in Humvee got the medal. I also lost a Navy corpsman, both at 29 Palms.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So can you go back to the original slide? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I knew the question right. You can appeal your claim as many, well, depending on your claims history, where where your claim is at and the differences of your appeal options, you can continue to appeal your claim as long as you're appealing it in the proper method and in the proper timeframes that are required, whatever step it is that you're at. I don't know. I'm assuming since you say you filed in 16, denied in 18, and you're still waiting, I don't know if that's at the board.
Must be.
Has to be, but that is a long wait. Um, I guess that would have to be a legacy case.
I would want to check on that because that sounds
Yeah,
to me like one of those cases where someone has inadvertently closed your case for no reason, and you need to
yeah,
check that out. That I don't have any cases that have been waiting since 2018 at this point on an appeal, unless that feels to me like they either misplaced your appeal or didn't open it up correctly or something like that. I would call the VA and find out what's going on there.
yeah. It definitely sounds a little strange, unless it has just gone up and down and up and down. But I still would think that 2018 is very old case to
There
still
should have
have
been
at the
some
board.
kind of decision,
Yeah,
a
that's
remand or yeah.
right. I agree with Shannon. I would definitely follow up on that and try to get like a status update. If they did close the case out, my claim is waiting to see the judge. Ah, man. Okay.
I mean, I'm getting decisions on cases we appealed 3 years ago, four
Yeah.
tops. 7
Yeah,
is
we have some from 2020, 2021, but I haven't seen 2018.
that's
Um,
that's odd. If you ask for a hearing, maybe because I don't typically ask for a board hearing because they take infinity time to get done that. So if you're waiting for a hearing, possibly that is what's going on.
yeah.
Um,
Um, hmm,
and you may want a hearing, but just so you know, you can waive the hearing if you ask for one initially, you can still get out of that.
yeah. And this is just okay. I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but what a bad idea to get somebody to look at that claim for you just because you've been waiting so long, just to make sure that all the evidence that you need is there and in the file so that when the judge does look at it, get to try to get a decision and not a remand if possible. But that's good. It makes me feel better that you know that it's pending. So
I will say, so if it's from 2018, that means it is a legacy case. And so when you asked how many times can I appeal, that's a different answer than under AMA. Under AMA, you can always file new evidence and file a supplemental claim. With a board decision under the legacy system, if they deny your claim, you have to go to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. If they deny it, you can go to the Federal Circuit. If they deny it, your only other option is the Supreme Court. So it's you're with that kind of with a legacy case, your appeal options are a little more limited. You can't give them new evidence after the board. So if you have anything else to give them, give it to them now. Make sure it gets on the record now, because once you appeal to the court, the Federal Circuit, you cannot give them any new evidence. So just make sure you have everything in that you want to give them at this point. Okay, I think we have time for one final question. Ernie Gutierrez, how do I get a PTSD CMP exam if I already filed for mental health increase and submitted a stressor? Doesn't this trigger the duty to assist under Clemens? If you filed for an increase, it does indeed trigger their duty to assist. They should be giving you a PTSD exam. If they don't, I would appeal that decision on the basis that they did not give you an exam.
File a higher level review, request a conference, and tell them they didn't give me an exam, and they'll issue a DTA and set an exam for you, or they should.
But if you have good medical records showing that your symptoms have increased, or you have your own doctor's opinion, I don't know that you want a CMP exam in that case. So if they don't want to give you one and you have great evidence already, I don't know that I'd necessarily ask for one. I certainly wouldn't object to getting my rating based on my own evidence, but you are entitled to an exam if you filed for an increase.
Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps us up for today. Thank you for joining us today, and someone will be back next week to answer your questions. And thank you for your service.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.